few months ago, I made this beginner's guide to NHL franchise mode. You guys seemed to really enjoy it and also came up with things that I didn't think of. So today, I'm here to answer your questions about franchise mode. And if I didn't answer your question this time, make sure to leave it in the comments because I'm hoping to make this a regular series. Let's dive into it. The first question comes from Kevin. Kevin says, thank you for doing this. I have a hard time understanding some of it in franchise mode. I always play with the St. Louis Blues. It's my favorite team, but the draft part is my problem. What is the difference between top elite, elite low, and elite middle? Now, this is something that I can see being very confusing right off the bat, and high, medium, and low for every different type of potential. What that means is the probability that a player is going to hit that potential, right? So right here, we've got Rasmus Dahlin, 91 high elite, and he is very likely to keep that elite. Now, for a player that potentially hasn't gotten there, a guy like Isaac Rosen, medium top 6 means he's got about an average chance to become a top 6 forward. And finally, a low top 4 defenseman or a low potential in general means that they are the least likely to hit that potential, but that doesn't mean they can't. I've had low elite players become absolute superstars, like in our Toledo Underdog series, where Brad Lambert was a low elite, and now he's a 90 overall center. So it's just the likelihood that these players are going to reach their potential. Another tidbit to keep in mind is the age of the player as well. A low top 6 forward who is 24 isn't going to have as much time to develop and grow and hit that low chance as a player who's much, much younger. A 19-year-old low elite has a higher chance of becoming elite than a low elite at 24 years old. The next question comes from It's 11 TV asking, how do I go about doing the season goals for players before the start of the season? They had a follow-up question as well that asked about short-term or long-term goals. And this is a brand new feature this year in NHL 25, guys, is the season goal and conversation engine. In the season goals, you have the option of short-term or long-term goals. Short-term goals will focus on the first half of the season, whereas long-term goals, you have the entire season to get them done. Short-term goals, you cannot set goals for things like X Factors or awards because obviously those aren't determined in just the first half of the season. But long-term goals to me are the area you want to be attacking. You've got the opportunity to still do the stat challenge, and a player can have a cold start. You find him a better D partner, or you put him on a different line, and all of a sudden they start producing in the second half, as well as the opportunity to win awards if you know they're going to win goal-scoring awards. If you know they might win the Calder, that's a great way to do that. I love to do X Factor goals because it's the quickest and easiest way to get your guys to boost chemistry and become elite players right away. Each X Factor does have its own goal, and as the player becomes better or is determined to get more ice time, you are going to see a higher number of goals. For example, Rasmus Dahlin is a defenseman, and to get Schneip on Dahlin, it's going to take 30 goals. But in our Toledo Underdog series, I had to get Cooper Lutz 50 goals to get the Schneip ability, so it is adjusted from player to player. I also like to do just regular stat challenges for older players and players that I don't think are going to be cornerstones of the franchise because they can still get attribute boosts for those. And the nice thing about these stat challenges, guys, is they do not need to hit the exact stat challenge goal. So at 50 assists here for Dahlin, it's +1 to +5. As he gets closer to 50, he will get closer to the +5 passing, but he can still get a +2, maybe a +3 if he gets 46 assists this season and doesn't quite hit it. It's not all or nothing. Out of Time Doc Gaming says, great video, dude. I learned a lot. However, can you explain to me why my guys in franchise mode are asking for 17 to 18 million in free agency? Guys like Mitch Marner. How do you get that number down? It's crazy. So this to me feels like you're talking to the elite and they're potentially in free agency. We'll start with the contract extension because the sooner you can get them a contract extension, the less they're going to ask for. The sooner, the better. With a guy like Owen Tippett, we're back in the Underdogs. We're in year number 8 here, and he is asking for 3 years, $10.3 million. Now, he had a good season, but he's a 33-year-old 89 overall, exact top 6 sniper. He's not a guy that I would want to be paying $10 million to at the start of a franchise. However, we are in year number 8, and the big thing I want to highlight to you guys is the salary cap percentage to the right side of the screen. You guys can see the cap outlook. It is $106.065 million. That is the cap ceiling going into next season for my franchise mode heading into year number 9. This $10.325 million is only worth 9.7% of the cap. Still a lot, but if you bring that back into today's dollars, 9.7% of the cap today would only be $8.5 million. So it's still a bit of a premium, but I could stomach paying a guy like Owen Tippett $8.5 million. So that is a handy way to do it, guys, to get yourself, if you're used to seeing contracts of today, just multiply the salary cap percentage by 88 million, which is today's salary cap. And if we want to talk about free agency specifically, here we are. We can see that Mikko Rantanen wants an absolutely insane, almost $15 million. The salary cap being $93.5 million, which is 15.8%, almost 16% of the cap, which is a ridiculous amount of money. Evan Bouchard wants 11.7, another crazy amount. But as you guys can see, they do have teams interested. Now, if I did want somebody like Patrick Kane, here's what you can do to try and get these guys for a little bit of a discount. If you see they have no teams interested in them, that means nobody is offering them. That's what this TI column stands for. You can see in the top right, it stands for team interested. We've got Besser, Bouchard, and Rantanen all have teams asking them to re-sign. They may be RFAs as well, which is what I'm checking here. RFAT means that you would have to give up draft picks if you sign them to a contract. UFA means you can sign them no matter what. Patrick Kane and Granlund, two guys that maybe could help my team right now, but I don't want to pay them $8 and $9 million. So what you can do is wait a little bit, and you'll figure out kind of what days as you play franchise mode are generally the signing days. But you can see that July 4th, July 5th are usually the big days to sign free agents. The big guys don't usually sign until the 5th. So we'll go ahead, jump up to the 4th here, and we'll see if Patrick Kane or if Granlund have offers. And you can see they still don't. And take a look at that. We're on the 4th. It's been a couple days of free agency. And now all of a sudden, Patrick Kane has dropped his asking price from $9 million to $7.5 million. So if you've got the nerve to be able to do this and you're not going to panic because maybe you wanted a guy like Mikko Rantanen and he's just gone, right? So that's where the negotiation feature comes in handy. But Patrick Kane has just dropped his seeking price as salary expected to $7.5. That's a $1.5 million. That is a ton of cap space difference. And as we keep advancing day by day, we're still on the July 9th. He still wants $7.5 million. If we keep going forward, now a team is interested in him, and now we have to make a decision. Granlund dropped his price a little bit as well. So Granlund's now just under 8 to 7.9. So maybe now's the time to jump in on Patrick Kane. Maybe we can keep going day by day and see if Granlund is going to keep dropping his asking price. Patrick Kane has now been signed. Granlund, I mean, he's been real stingy, guys. I've never seen a guy be this stingy. Usually it happens more like Patrick Kane, less like Granlund. But you can see him dropping that price a little bit was enough to get him to get an offer. We still have Evan Bouchard out here as well at 11.7. If we keep advancing the day, he may continue to drop his price. It's still at 11.7. He is an RFA. He could always sign back with the Edmonton Oilers because he was tendered, and we know that because he's an RFA with one team interested, meaning if we signed him for this 11.7 million, we can go in here, we can see he wants to know, okay, sure, we'll offer him that contract. It's going to pop up with a warning. We'd have to give up the next 4 years of first-round picks, and we don't want to do that. So we want to see when is he going to change his price. If we just hit the X button on Xbox or Square on PlayStation, we can just keep advancing a day. I'm currently ruining my team because nobody is signing, but that's okay. We can get Bouchard hopefully down and maybe make it where we'd love to give him an offer. So we're already at the start of next season, and Evan Bouchard is still asking for 11.7 over 7 years in free agency and likely to the Edmonton Oilers as well. So obviously you can see this isn't a silver bullet, works every time with every player, but sometimes when you're negotiating with them and you're offering them and they're declining, you can get them to work their asking price down if we go week by week. We saw it work with Patrick Kane. Granlund worked his down a little bit. So that could be a way for you guys to get these guys to decrease their asking price. If you can't, sometimes it might be better to just sell them off. You can't sign Bouchard. You're the Oilers. You don't have the cap space. You love the team. McDavid, Draisaitl, right? I'm not touching any of that. Bouchard, gotta go. Go get somebody younger, cheaper, and maybe some future assets. Maybe a medium elite prospect from a team that is ready to contend now and doesn't have time to wait for these guys, and they can take Bouchard. You can bring him in, but that is a way that you could potentially get these guys to lower their asking price. And guys, if you are enjoying this episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We are very close to 4,000 subscribers. I'm trying to get to 4,000 this year and maybe even 5. So subscribe from you guys that are enjoying the video would help me out a ton. The next question comes from Jonathan Austin Wright. He says he wants to like this mode, but for him, it's too hard to compare current players to what he wants to get, like Franchise Hockey Manager 11 or Out of the Park Baseball 25. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. No, you're really not. There is no like one-to-one compare a player side by side or line by line. But as you guys can see here, we are in the player search view. It's right here on this tab with the bar graph. You go down to player search. You can plug in anything basically that you want to see. I want to see guys that are medium elite. I don't know why they still do the star ranges. That's like legacy. That's NHL on the Xbox 360 days. I want a young player. You kind of have to know what you want in mind. Any position. Actually, let's just look for forwards. And I'm looking for a medium elite guy who can take face-off. So what I want to do is I want to come here, down here, and then I don't really care about anything but their face-off rating, and I want to make sure that they are an 80 face-off or better. So this is a way that if you know the weakness of your team or something that you want to target, here you can find a list of every player that is medium elite and can take face-offs for you. You can see it's sorted by trade value, so you can get Quentin Byfield is probably the cheapest that really fits the idea of what I wanted here. So you can click on him with the right stick. You can see that he's a first-line forward. He's 89. He's a power forward. He's developed really, really well. There are all of his stats, right? You kind of got to know who he's replacing or what kind of player you want. You keep scrolling. You got his salary, how many years left, and then you can get into the stars, and then you get into everybody's individual stats. So, okay, I know I wanted guys that have good face-off rating and have high potential, but I also want to know guys that can really skate well. So let me see if I can just sort by speed right now. And Connor McDavid, McKinnon, Stützle, Rupe, Hintz, and then Byfield's actually the 5th fastest guy that fit my criteria. And it will show you your own players in this, I believe, as well. Yep, just had to confirm that real quick. There is Rasmus Dahlin, so we are using the Sabres. Dahlin here fits in to the criteria. I said I wanted medium elite, or excuse me, low elite or higher, and guys that had 90 offensive awareness. Okay, now that I have that list of guys, let's sort these players by their defensive awareness, because now I want a two-way dynamo, and you can see here are all the players listed. I will even show you prospects. It will show you free agents as well, their clauses, and you don't have to have them scouted, right? We can see Brant Clark here plays for the LA Kings, but you can see maybe they'd be unsigned or in the AHL. Maybe you're looking for a third-line center, so let's show you that real quick. So I'm looking for a potential centerman or just a third-line two-way forward, and here I sorted by guys without a contract. You can set it to 0 contract years minimum and 0 contract years maximum. I don't want to trade for somebody. I could trade for Antropov here, but as a 50 overall, not exactly what I'm looking for. Tanner Pearson, 80 overall, 33, doesn't have a contract. I can go out and sign this guy right now in free agency. Maybe I am looking for that third-line center, so out of all the free guys I can go out and get, here are the players with the highest face-off ratings, and I can compare Nick Bonino, Riley Sheahan, Rasmus Kupari. These guys are all free agents. They're not quite good. Obviously, we're looking at a very random thing here at the very start of the season, but you guys can see, okay, Kupari is the fastest guy. It's sorted by face-off, so of the free guys, he's still got 77 face-off. He is super fast, so you know what? I just play the games. I don't need them to have great physical, or I don't need them to have great offensive awareness. I just need fast guys because I like playing with fast guys. So I found Rasmus Kupari here. He fits the criteria. Now I can go to free agency and sign this guy. So that is probably the best way, I would say, to compare players. You have to at least know what you want. Unfortunately, in a one-for-one trade, there really is no way of determining who's better in what category. I'd love to see them implement a side-by-side or just a view like this where you can compare the two players. Things like this are already built into the game, so something I'd love to see in the future, but hopefully this helps you compare players and you gained a little bit of use out of this. Foxkeys says, great video. I have a question. How do you change franchise in franchise mode in NHL 25? Because I did it by accident and I'm wondering how to change it back. Now, this is something that is only possible in owner mode. I know other games like NBA 2K allow you to have total control over the entire universe you're in, but NHL only allows you to control one team. You cannot switch your team after you've started your franchise mode. And the reason that it did happen is with owner mode on, your contract actually does expire as the general manager. So when your contract expires, you got to make sure that either you can go back to the team that you built up, or you can potentially leave that team that you built up. Maybe you are in the middle of a dynasty and you want to challenge yourself to undo that team's dynasty. Well, when your contract is up, you are able to switch franchises and depending on who offers you a contract. So it is a little bit random. There's no structure to it. And unfortunately, unless you have a save file from when before you switch, there's no way to switch back. But I do think it's kind of a neat challenge to maybe build up a team, win the President's Trophy, win the Stanley Cup, and then leave and try and beat that team that you built. That could be a fun franchise mode challenge for you. Kevin's back, and Kevin has another question wondering how to just determine what is happening in the progress report. It's something that's not very explained very well. There's really no guide on it anywhere, but you can see that here is the progress report supposedly telling you how your players are developing and growing. And you're like, why does Malkin and Crosby and Barbashev and Peterka have an orange 4, but Jake Wallman has a green 4, and all these guys down here have a green 4, and Hayes and like, what does this mean? Nieto has a green 10. I'm not sure how to interpret this. So if we sort by this, it's the attributes modified column. This tells you how many different attribute categories: wrist shot power, wrist shot accuracy, speed, offensive awareness, defensive awareness. Those are the categories. How many of those were modified? And if we take a look at Matt Nieto here, he is got a 10 green. And what the green usually signifies is natural growth. That player's got a bit of natural growth to their game. They did develop something that's going to stick around forever. That's their new baseline no matter what happens. That is their new baseline stats. You can see he got a natural +2 to his puck control, leaving it at an 86. Here, you can see he got natural growth in offensive awareness. However, his morale growth is a -1. So if we can make Matt Nieto happy, we know that naturally he's an 85 in his current rating, but -1 due to the bad morale is going to keep him at an 84. Looking here, we can see we have Matt Nieto declining a little bit naturally. His slap shot power and wrist shot power have went down, and we have seen that this is because of our preseason focus. We can usually determine that because these are some +1s, some minuses. We have set a season goal, and that impacts our natural growth. And the morale growth is by being happy. We can tell that again. Defensive awareness, right? Some natural growth there. Stick checking minus, speed minus. We can see that most of it was natural growth, but actually a decline. Sidney Crosby has 4. You can see he got the biggest boost to puck control, offensive awareness, defensive awareness, but -2 to speed. So if you are worried about your team becoming slower and slower, keep an eye on that pre-season focus. Sometimes these guys will have red numbers in here, and that's because it's all just bad growth and it's not good. But you can see here, maybe declining your speed isn't the best thing in the world if you are playing the games. I know sometimes you sim and you're like, defensive awareness and offensive awareness is perfect, but these growths do stick with the players, so keep an eye for that. But that is how you read and interpret this natural growth, statistical growth, and morale growth. I know I didn't touch on statistical growth, but that's just basically growth based on their performance. Whether they had a lot of goals, maybe they'll get a lot of shooting attribute boosts, or maybe they had lots of points, so they're kind of growing all over the place statistically. And a player that has a good season has a chance to grow statistically, and if they have a bad statistical season, like a goalie gets absolutely shelled despite being an 89, well, you might see him come into the next season an 86. He's got to fight to regain that 89 and even grow even more. And you can see defensemen, maybe if they've got a lot of block shots or a lot of plus-minus, right? You can see them grow statistically as well. But really, this is why points are so important, why getting as many points, having an offensive-minded team, because having low offensive output will hurt this statistical growth. The final question comes from Len White asking, how do you add a player to your team roster? Now, I'm not exactly sure how to interpret this one. I did follow up, but they weren't exactly explicit. If we're just talking about moving players without having to trade them, unfortunately, there is nothing you can do there. You can't come into the edit player screen like I am here while you're already in franchise mode and move Peterka to a different team, or Maybe I want to move Crosby to the Washington Capitals and have him play with Ovechkin and just have a cursed timeline. You can't do that in franchise mode. You can do that in the main menu, but unfortunately you can't do that here. The best way I would say you could do that is to turn the trade difficulty down from medium to easy. Then again, you still have to give up assets, and if you're trying to get McDavid on the Penguins, you're probably not going to be able to do it with the salary cap implications, even with salary cap off. I don't know if you're going to have the assets, so that's probably the easiest way to do it in franchise mode itself, but there is no good, easy way to do it. Now, if you're wondering how to get a player that you've drafted and signed onto your roster, you come into edit lines, and I just don't see the guy I was looking for. I just drafted this guy number 2 overall. He looks really good, but I signed him. He's not on the active roster. I hold the left trigger, go to scratched. He's not any of these guys. How do I get him into this lineup so that I can play him? He's got a contract, and I don't see him here, and I go to the AHL, and I don't see him down there either. Now, this can happen because the player might be a CHL player, and they just never got called up. So what you can do is after you draft a player from the CHL, which is the WHL, the OHL, or the QMJHL, those players can't play in the AHL until I believe they're like 20 years old. I think it's something like that. So if you send them down, they go back to juniors. But if you call them up, they can play on the active roster. So what you'll do is potentially, if you want to do it the quickest and easiest way, I'd say, is in the edit line screen, go ahead and click the left trigger and go down to go to roster moves. Once you're in go to roster moves, go to players in the system. And this will show you everybody that is in the system, not just everybody that is playing for your AHL affiliate. Now, I'm not sure if the Penguins have anybody that is in the CHL, but if they were, you would be able to see them here. But they should usually be at the top here. And if, say, I signed Emil Bemstrom, where did he go? Oh, he's an 81. I kind of want to bring him up. You can push the A button to call him up. You may get this screen, though. These moves will result in your team being over the allowable player limit. So what I'm going to do is, because I still know I want Bemstrom to come up, but I don't have the room for it. So I'm going to push X on Xbox or square on PlayStation, and you can see that we've got the multi-select function popping up. So now we can see that we know we're calling up Emil Bemstrom to the NHL, and then I'm going to sort the player overall. And Anthony Beauvillier, well, we know Bemstrom's an 81, so Beauvillier is 76. Probably not the guy I want to have here. I'm going to push X or square again, and then push the A button on Xbox and the X button on PlayStation. There you go. You can see the player movement. Bemstrom is going to get called up, and Anthony Beauvillier is going to get sent down. Now, one thing to keep a note on is over to the right, you can see Anthony Beauvillier will have to clear waivers to go down to the minors, meaning any team has a chance to pick them up and keep them on their team. So you do have a chance to lose a guy like Anthony Beauvillier. We hit confirm. There we go. Bemstrom is up. And then if we go to in the system, we can see that Beauvillier did make it down and is now playing for the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton Penguins down in the AHL. And if we hit B, we got to hit best lines for the AHL because I'm not going to touch the AHL. And now all of a sudden, here we are at the lines going to the NHL, and we can go ahead and hit head coach preferred lines, and we should see that Emil Bemstrom is now an option for us to play. If we go to scratched and wanted to do it ourselves, there's Matt Nieto, who we talked about earlier. We could go ahead and throw him in there. But that is how, guys, you would add a player to your roster that you signed that just isn't there, or you drafted him, but there is no way to manually move players. I hope this was helpful for you guys. If you do have questions that I haven't answered here or in my beginner's guide, please leave them in the comment section. I will be doing this again to go through and answer as many of your questions as specific as they need to be. Give me examples, give me questions. Why isn't my team simming well? I'll answer it all, guys. I want to help you out, and I want you to have fun in franchise mode because I absolutely love franchise mode. I love the NHL and their structure. I feel like it's really easy to digest, and I love to see new fans coming into this series and becoming hockey fans. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like if I helped you out. If I didn't, well, then leave a comment. And guys, make sure to subscribe. We are on the way to 4,000 subscribers. We are super close, so everyone helps. Appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.